violence of the Maoists or Naxalites continues. The latest one being the derailment of the Howrah-Kurla Gyaneshwari Express near Jharkhand. The death toll from this horrific accident has reached over 100, with more than 250 others injured, many of them critically. This follows earlier attacks, one on a bus in which 15 police personnel and 26 civilians were killed, and the other on CRPF personnel, which killed 76. Both these were in Dantewada district in Chhattisgarh.
Home Minister P. Chidambaram, facing intense criticism for the ill preparedness of the CRPF in such attacks, volunteered to resign his post, only to be asked by the Prime Minister to continue.
If a horrible tragedy took place, I think it is the moral responsibility of the Minister to tender his resignation, and therefore I tendered my resignation.
In typical Chidambaram speak, the Home Minister acknowledged that the buck stopped at his desk and he took responsibility for the attacks. Following this storm, an intense parley between the various estates of Indian democracy has taken place as to how to handle the Maoist challenge. While one stream of thought, strongly supported by sections of the Indian right as well as the ruling government, want a hard militaristic solution to the conflict, there is another voice that wants to go about this using restraint and trying to win over disgruntled sections of the Indian population, thereby undercutting the support to the Maoists in areas such as in Dantewada or in Bastar districts of Chhattisgarh. NewsClick will examine both these views as we try to understand the nature of the Maoist challenge to the Indian state. The spread of Maoist influence and violence in India has been much acknowledged. Some estimates claim that the Maoists are present in more than 250 districts in the country. The specific areas of strong Maoist influence include the areas of Dantewada and Bastar in Chhattisgarh, in Koraput in Orissa, in Gadchiroli in Maharashtra, in many districts of tribal Jharkhand, and in 3 districts, Bankura, Purulia and West Medinipur in West Bengal. The areas encompassing northern Telangana in Andhra Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh and in Orissa were primarily the basis of the Communist Party of India Marxist-Leninist People's War, and those in Jharkhand and in parts of Bihar and West Bengal were those of the Maoist Communist Center before both these groups merged to form the Communist Party of India Maoist in 2004. One estimate among police sources made during the time of the merger suggested that the total weapon-holding cadre strength of the merged party was around 5,500. Today, it is estimated that the armed cadre number nearly 20,000. While the initial wave of the Naxalbari movement died down due to a mixture of internal dissension, state reaction and poor strategizing, or indeed incompatibility of the movement to the conditions of its existence, the present Maoist current has managed to make small gains. In the state of Chhattisgarh, the absence of the state in its welfare role in many tribal regions created a vacuum which was duly occupied by the Maoists. Experts who have visited areas in Chhattisgarh affirm the degree of popular support enjoyed by the Maoists in some regions.
Look at it area by area. They've been in some areas. They've been there for the since last 30 years, since 1980, where they've been doing land distribution. The state has been more or less absent. In other areas, they're just beginning to come. I mean, parts of central Bastar, for instance, they weren't there even up to 2 years ago, but now they're there because of the Salva Judum and the fact that people joined them afterwards. So I think it's a very variable kind of situation, and one would have to look at sort of levels of, and also when you say support, it's not a one-off thing, right? People support them for some things, may not entirely agree with them on other things. So people, for instance, most people there would support land distribution. A few people whose lands are being distributed are not supporting them. But even assuming we're talking about most people, say people support them for keeping the forest department away, keeping the police away, but they also want schools, they also want government services, which are difficult when the Maoists are there, perhaps.
With such a situation, would the strategy to load areas of Maoist influence with paramilitary forces to take them on bring any dividends?
Anyone who would look at a map and see the dispersal and deployment of forces would find that this is completely inadequate and completely out of sync, irreconcilable with the strategic objectives of this deployment. I have repeatedly said that given the forces we have available to us for counter Maoist operations today, no deployment is rational. If you concentrate force, you will abandon vast territories and they will eat away at your peripheries. There will be transport links, there will be some movement, whether for supplies or for operations. They will get you on your peripheries. They will attack small units at their points of vulnerability. If you disperse force, then all units become vulnerable. So basically what you have to do is not try to aim for the kind of strategies that they were looking at, area domination. You seek area domination when you have high saturations of force. You seek seize, hold and develop objectives when you have high saturations of force. You don't send 80 men into a jungle where you don't know how many Maoists are present to do area domination. 80 men is laughable.
The state response to the Maoist challenge has also been detrimental to the tribals, as the launch of the Salwa Judum program suggests.
Killings has gone up hugely on both sides, right? So, and the Maoists have also had much more recruitment since 2005 than they had. So in terms of just numbers who are engaged in armed action as against other kinds of actions, that has increased. But that, in a sense, you could say has been a combination of their own interest in militarizing as well as being thrust upon them by the state. Because of the way Salwa Judum has operated, more and more people are, in a sense, joining or getting arms training. I mean, there are areas I know which were not involved in anything, but where people are now getting some kind of training. And it's now a situation where I think they have their open political activity is completely impossible. I mean, they're a banned organization. So in a sense, both sides are in a war and both sides are militarizing.
What is the way to tackle the military strength of the Maoists, who have simultaneously buttressed themselves with the sympathetic support of ordinary tribals? Is the one-size-fits-all strategy of tackling counterinsurgency with high numbers of mostly inadequately trained paramilitary forces the answer?
We are not fighting the Maoists. We are fighting particular groupings controlled in certain manners within the hierarchy in specific areas. So local characteristics, operational patterns, all these things must be ideological differences, leadership differences, cracks in the leadership, which exist in every organization. You put 3 people together, you've got a crack somewhere. So in an organization as large as the Maoists, there will be a wide area of opportunity. So our responses have to be based on these opportunities of intervention. Unfortunately, they tend to be framed or phrased in terms of grand generalizations on all counts. We have not really understood the Maoists. We have not understood them at the overarching level, and we certainly have not understood them at the operational, localized operational levels.
As one does an overall assessment of the Maoist challenge, it could be noticed that the nature of it varies in various states. At one level, the challenge has strengthened itself through grievance redressal of disenchanted citizens, albeit through military means, and at another level through sheer terrorism of the individual assassination variety. It would be naive to conflate the responses to one form of the challenge onto the other, and one could say that the solution and the answer could be in the form of a combined package.
Most villages that I had spoken, and I spoke to people from a range of different villages, the government has not provided a range of services. The Maoist parallel state has also not provided a range of services. So in a sense, both are states which claim to be states, but both have serious capacity failings. I mean, if you want to put it that way.
I can agree with the entire critique, the Maoist critique of the Indian state. I agree with Azad when he says that Indian democracy is a parliamentary pigsty. That does not mean that I agree with Azad that murdering people and that destroying whatever minimal constitutional structure we have is the solution. Yes, this is a very, very filthy, degraded, corrupt system. But that doesn't mean that if I blow up this system, its successor system will necessarily be better. You cannot displace millions of people through developmental projects on a promise that sometime in the indeterminate future we will give you some compensation. My children are dying today because you have taken away my land, my livelihood and my home. That does not mean that what the Maoists are doing is right. it means that we need to transform the state, yes. But what the Maoists are doing needs to be resisted enormously.
This concludes the first part of NewsClick's feature on the Maoist challenge to the Indian state. In the following part, NewsClick will examine the political program of the Maoists, their history, and their conception of the present Indian state against whom they have launched their so-called protracted People's War. Thank you.